They say birthdays are for family, for gathering, remembering, reconnecting. But I've come to learn that sometimes they're just a stage for distance, dressed up as celebration. I arrived early. Always have. Habit from years of being the one who packed the cake, set the table, made sure the matches for the birthday candles worked. But when I walked in and saw the cluster of gift bags on the table, none of them mine, I felt something catch low in my ribs. There was laughter already, music playing soft from the corner speaker, the smell of barbecue and beer batter bread. People I didn't recognize hugging, clinking glasses, filling the space I used to occupy without asking. And in that moment, I knew. I had shown up early to a party that had already started without me. I live alone now, not in a tragic way, just unshared. My husband, Dan, passed 3 winters ago. Our son, Jonah, visits less and less. But I tell myself that's normal. He's busy. They all are. My days are small on purpose. I sweep the porch, make one good cup of coffee, water the stubborn fern that never quite died. I've learned to stretch the hours so they don't stretch me. The mail comes around too, though it rarely brings more than catalogues and bank statements. Still, I check. Sometimes I wonder if someone else on this street stands at their box each afternoon, pretending they're not hoping for anything. Most days, I pretend too. It was a Tuesday when Jonah called, mid-morning. I was folding laundry and almost didn't hear the phone over the hum of the dryer. He sounded cheerful, not giddy, not quite rushed, just like someone ticking something off a list. He said they were planning a party, something small but nice, catered, maybe a few games. Nothing crazy, he said, just casual. I asked if he needed help with anything. He said they'd already figured it out. I asked what time I should come by. There was a pause. He said guests were arriving around 3. Guests. I asked if there was anything he wanted me to bring. He hesitated, then told me maybe the lemon cake, if it wasn't too much trouble. I told him it wasn't. Of course it wasn't. But after we hung up, I sat there with a dish towel in my hands and a feeling I couldn't name. Not sadness, not quite. Just the quiet sense that I'd been invited as an afterthought. No mention of speeches or candles. No mention of looking forward to seeing me. Just logistics. I folded the towel again, even though it was already folded. Sometimes you do that when you don't know what else to do. I brought the lemon cake in a glass dish, covered with the same blue-checked towel I used when Jonah was little. It still smelled like vanilla and memory. I wore the navy blouse he once said made me look elegant like TV mums, and pinched my hair back with the silver clip I'd saved for nicer days. The house was already full when I arrived. Cars lined both sides of the street. Music drifted from the open windows. Something upbeat with bass. A woman I didn't recognize opened the door. She paused, waiting for me to fill it in. I told her I was Jonah's mum. She smiled politely and welcomed me in. The living room buzzed with noise and colour. People with drinks, paper hats, kids running between legs, balloons taped to the corners of the ceiling. Jonah was by the grill, laughing, holding tongs like a baton. He didn't see me at first. Someone took the cake and said thank you without asking my name. I stood by the entryway too long, waiting for direction. Eventually, a younger man in a party shirt waved me toward a table near the back. No sign, no name card, no reservation for Mum. The others at my table were nice enough. A couple from Jonah's gym, a woman who worked in HR. None of them knew me. Most of them talked over me, their sentences skipping across the surface of conversation like pebbles on a lake. At one point, someone toasted Jonah. They clinked plastic cups and cheered while a friend told a story about a road trip I'd never heard of. There were photos on a poster board. Jonah in college, Jonah on a hike, Jonah at a Halloween party dressed as a cowboy. None of them included me. He never came to my table. Not once. I watched him hug people, accept gifts, take selfies. At one point, he danced with a girl I didn't recognize, both of them laughing like they shared a language I no longer spoke. I refilled my own cup. Twice. Smiled when someone pointed a camera in my direction, though I don't think the photo came out. By the end, my back ached from the folding chair, and my hands smelled faintly of candle wax and unsaid things. I slipped out while no one was looking. No one stopped me. It was a Thursday when he called again, the kind of day that slips past without asking much of you. Not cold enough for a coat, not warm enough to feel like ease. I remember the way the light filtered through the window that morning, pale and aimless. I had just finished folding towels when the phone buzzed. I stared at it for a few seconds, half expecting a reminder, maybe a weather alert. But it was Jonah. His name on the screen made something flicker in my chest. Not dread, exactly. Not hope, either. Just the alertness of knowing you're about to be offered something that might come dressed as kindness, but isn't necessarily safe. The kind of day that couldn't decide if it was spring or late winter. Sky grey but soft, like it had something it didn't want to say. Jonah's voice was bright. Too bright. He said he'd love to have me over for dinner. Just us, he said. No distractions this time. I said yes before he finished asking. I didn't ask why now, or where Lauren would be. Some part of me wanted to believe he'd noticed how quiet I'd been at the party, that he missed me. That evening, I wore the cardigan I had on when I brought him home from the hospital. It still fit, soft at the wrists, though the thread had started to pull near the elbow. I baked a batch of oatmeal cookies and wrapped them in foil. Nothing fancy, just something warm to set on the counter. The drive was quiet. I took the long way, through back roads that still remembered tire tracks from his first driving lesson. A stretch of road still curved sharply near the old train trestle, and I slowed down automatically. Not from fear, just memory. When he was learning to drive, he used to grip the wheel a little too tight, jaw set, like he was trying to pass a test I wasn't giving. His new house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, clean lawn, square shrubs, a porch light that blinked on automatically when I pulled up. The blinds in the front window were open just a sliver. I could see a candle flickering near the back of the kitchen. He opened the door quickly, as if he'd been standing there already, smiled wide, greeted me warmly, and gave me a quick hug that didn't quite reach the shoulders. The kitchen was spotless, 2 plates already set, wine uncorked. A shallow bowl of something that looked like roasted squash sat cooling on the counter, but it didn't steam. No clatter of pans, no hiss of stovetop heat. Just the faint after scent of something heated up long before I arrived. Even the trash can lid was perfectly shut, like nothing had been discarded. It didn't feel staged exactly. Just hollow, like a room that remembered being used, but wasn't sure how to resume its purpose. The smell of something roasted lingered faintly in the air, but I didn't see anything in the oven. There were bread rolls in a basket, but no butter, no serving utensils. I noticed a small stack of cloth napkins that didn't match. He motioned for me to sit, poured the wine, said it was good to catch up, and asked about the weather, the fern, if I'd read anything interesting lately. His voice had that measured cadence, like he was working through a checklist in his head. His eyes flicked, once, to a folder sitting near the edge of the table. He didn't touch it right away. We talked about nothing for a while. Then he cleared his throat and slid the folder toward me. Not across the table exactly, more like placing it in the middle and waiting for gravity to finish the gesture. He said it wasn't a big deal. Just something for peace of mind, he called it. Said it was common. Said everyone's doing it. He said it the way someone offers you an umbrella on a day that might rain, like you'd be foolish not to take it. His words were smooth, rehearsed, almost. He didn't fumble, didn't hesitate. And that precision made my fingers go cold, because Jonah, the Jonah I knew, always stumbled a little when he was nervous. This Jonah, he was polished, practiced, like he'd run through this in his head more than once. He gestured at the folder again, like it might explain itself if I just looked at it long enough. I reached for it slowly, pressing my fingertips to the top page without flipping it open. The tab read, "Durable Power of Attorney." He said he'd been meaning to bring this up for a while. Said it was just in case anything ever happened. His voice stayed light, but his eyes tracked my hand. I opened the folder. The first page was full of legal terms, but the subtext was louder than the ink. Authorization, access, control. He kept talking, said it was standard, said it would just make things easier if, God forbid, I ever got sick or couldn't handle things. He said everyone's doing it again, like that phrase could soften anything. I nodded, but I didn't speak. My throat felt too narrow. He pulled a pen from somewhere, uncapped already, and set it gently beside the folder. I noticed then that there was no food on the stove, no dishes in the sink, just the illusion of dinner, like the invitation had never been about a meal at all. There were no smells of herbs or steam from the oven, no sound of a timer or clatter of serving spoons. The kitchen was as silent as the inside of a waiting room. I closed the folder, carefully, told him I'd take it home to review. He smiled, like that was fine, but something behind his eyes dimmed, the kind of smile that expects a different answer. After that, we talked about weather again, the neighbour's new fence, a podcast I hadn't heard of. His voice moved smoothly across the surface of things. When I stood to leave, he hugged me again. Lighter this time. One-armed. Like someone clocking out of a shift. I walked to the car with the cookies still wrapped in foil, untouched. The porch light blinked off before I reached the curb. Motion sensor, automatic, efficient. Back home, I didn't change out of my coat. I sat on the couch with the unopened folder in my lap and stared at it like it might blink first. I thought about all the nights I stayed up with him when he was sick. The time I drove 5 hours with a spare tire in the trunk because he didn't want to wait for roadside assistance. The time he called from college at 2 a.m. because he'd lost his keys, and I Venmo'd money for a hotel without hesitation. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something inside me had begun to shift. Slowly, like ice cracking just beneath the surface. This wasn't protection. It was a claim. And I had felt it, even before the pen hit the table. But even then, I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to believe I had misunderstood. That the folder was just formality. That the dinner had been real. That maybe Jonah had just gone about it the wrong way. I stood in the kitchen and almost reached for the pen. Almost told myself that trust meant giving things over, even when they felt uneven. But then I heard Dan's voice again. Not out loud, but in the part of my mind he always occupied. He used to say that the trickiest kind of trap is the one that looks like help. Dan was good at spotting motives people dressed up as kindness. He used to say that if it comes with urgency and a smile, read it twice. I walked through the living room with the folder in hand and sat on the armrest of the couch, not quite ready to commit to stillness. The house creaked a little, as old houses do, like it was holding its breath with me. I stared at the edge of the folder and traced the curve of the paperclip holding the last two forms together. There was a signature line, my name already printed below it. I set it on the table and walked away. I made tea I didn't drink. I scrubbed the sink even though it was clean. I dusted behind the radiator. Anything but deciding, because deciding would mean admitting what I already knew. I didn't open the folder that night. Not right away. I placed it on the kitchen counter next to the cookies I never unwrapped, then sat by the window with the lights off and watched the streetlight cast its long, slow shadow across the porch. I thought of Dan, how he used to call legal forms silent hammers, tools people used to look helpful while measuring control. He never liked assumptions, never liked pressure dressed as practicality. The house felt cold, but I didn't move to fix it. The next morning, I opened the folder, read the first few lines again. Same phrases: financial authority, medical decisions, real estate management, immediate access, no expiration. Nowhere did it say mother, just principal, just agent. I placed a sticky note on the last page, one word written in all caps: pending. Then I shut it again. I spent the day reorganizing the hall closet, not because it needed it, but because I did. I pulled out a shoebox I hadn't touched in years. Inside were letters, old receipts, Dan's business card from his last job. Tucked beneath a stack of bank slips was a folded envelope with my name on it, his handwriting. My hands paused. Inside was a short note, a paragraph, maybe two. He said he trusted me to know when enough was enough. Said that just because someone asks kindly doesn't mean the ask is kind. Said love should never come with a clipboard. I read it 3 times. Then I tucked it back inside the envelope, placed it on top of the folder Jonah had given me, and carried both to the cabinet above the fridge. That night, when the phone rang, I let it go to voicemail. Jonah's voice came through the speaker like it was wrapped in bubble wrap. Clear, but too careful. He said he just wanted to check in, asked if I'd had a chance to look things over, said again that there was no rush, that it would just be smart to get things in order. I didn't respond right away. I watched a bird land on the power line outside, shake twice, then fly off. Finally, I said I'd think about it. He said he understood. Said he and Lauren had found someone, a financial advisor, who could walk me through everything. No pressure, he added. But there was pressure. It was in every pause, every softened syllable, every deflection that sounded like care but smelled like strategy. We ended the call on a polite note, the kind that leaves no fingerprints but still leaves bruises. I sat there a while longer, the envelope and folder now hidden, the phone screen dark, and I realized I was not going to sign. It wasn't fear holding me back. It was clarity, finally sharp enough to stand on. The invitation came by text this time, short, a little clumsy. He said he wanted to do dinner soon, just us. No papers, he promised. I let it sit for a few hours before replying. I waited, not out of doubt, but to let the quiet speak for itself. Eventually I typed back that I would come. I didn't tell him I wouldn't be coming alone. Carol parked one street over. We agreed she'd stay in the car unless I needed her. It wasn't about intimidation. It was about clarity. She was a retired estate lawyer, but more than that, she had a kind of stillness that made people underestimate her. That was useful now. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose, just enough to make space between the ask and the answer. Jonah greeted me barefoot, holding a dish towel, sleeves rolled. The kitchen smelled like garlic and something roasted. This time, Real food. Plates were set, wine uncorked, bread on the table. He was trying, or performing. I couldn't tell which yet. We made small talk at first. He asked if I'd been reading anything good. I mentioned a mystery novel from the library. He nodded, but didn't ask what it was about. His eyes kept drifting toward a manila folder on the side table. Clipped, tidy, waiting. He didn't reach for it. Not yet. Eventually, he stood and walked toward the side table, careful, like he didn't want to spook the moment. He picked up the folder, thinner than the last, and sat back down with it resting on his lap. "This one's different," he said, almost too casually. He said he'd talked to someone who helped simplify it. "It's not binding," he said. "Just provisional. It keeps things smooth, that's all." I didn't move. Just waited. He opened the folder and placed it between us. This time, no pen. But the pages were already tabbed. He said he'd talked to a friend in elder law, said this was a common sense version, said I'd still have control, but it would just give them backup in case something unexpected happened. I listened. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper, folded twice. I laid it over the stack he'd offered. No words, no explanation, just the sound of paper meeting paper. He blinked, confused, unfolded it. His jaw moved, like he was swallowing a response he hadn't rehearsed. It was a formal trust declaration. Signed, dated, executed, revocable only by me. I let the silence stretch between us before I spoke. I said I appreciated his concern, but I'd already taken care of my affairs. Everything was in place. He sat still. His fingers tapped once against the placemat, then stopped. He asked if I'd talked to someone. I nodded. I told him about a friend, someone who understands what protection really means. The folder on his lap looked smaller now. Carol knocked gently at the doorframe then. She stepped inside, smooth and polite, like she was arriving to pick me up from tea. I introduced her as the friend who'd helped me with everything. Jonah stood, said hello. His tone was even, but his eyes were moving too fast. I told him we'd be going now. I stood, gathered my coat. The chair didn't scrape. The wineglass remained half full. I didn't look back. He didn't sit back down. For a moment, he just stood there with the folder still in his hands, like it might have something else to offer if he looked at it longer. Then he placed it neatly on the counter. Not discarded, not clutched, just set aside, like a card he knew wouldn't win the round. He poured himself a little more wine. Not mine. Didn't ask if I wanted more. He sipped it too fast, like he needed to fill the space between us with something that didn't ask questions. He said I could have told him that I was doing all that. I didn't respond right away. I had words, just none he was ready to hear. Not the real kind. He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms, but the posture didn't hold. He looked like a man trying to remember what part he was playing. Then he smiled. That soft, familiar kind of smile he used to use when he was late to curfew and thought charm might do the trick. Back then, it had worked. He'd come in with snow in his hair and a joke ready on his lips, and I'd be too relieved to be angry. It was a dance we both knew, one I taught him without meaning to. I wondered how many other moments like that had turned into habits, small permissions he mistook for lifelong access. He said he could understand it. It was my decision. I had my plan. He just didn't expect me to go that far. There it was. The edge beneath the cordial tone, the hint of control slipping and the need to pull it back. I met his eyes and told him he didn't expect me to say no. He hesitated, He said he didn't expect me to have something already in place. We stood in that pause together, but we were not in the same room anymore. On the way home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want noise, just something steady. I took the long road again, the one with the curve near the water tower, the one Jonah used to beg me to speed around when he was little. I drove slow this time. Back at the house, I didn't take off my coat right away. I walked into the kitchen and looked at the notepad by the fridge. I had written a grocery list earlier that morning. Eggs, coffee, tangerines. But now I couldn't remember why I'd thought any of it mattered. I poured the rest of the wine Jonah had given me into the sink, watched it swirl down like something never claimed. Then I opened the drawer, pulled out a clean sheet of paper, and wrote 2 words at the top. I decide. Then I folded it and slipped it into the same envelope that held Dan's letter. Not because it needed to be kept, because it needed to be witnessed. Some choices don't need to be shared to be real. Some power doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly in a drawer, waiting, not to be used, but to be remembered. I slept well that night. Not peacefully, not dreamlessly, but without clutching at anything. In the morning, the light through the blinds looked clean, not forgiving, not triumphant, just clear. I made toast and didn't eat it, brewed tea and drank half. Then I walked to the window and stood there until my legs ached, not because I was waiting, but because I wasn't. No calls, no texts, no second wave. And still, I stayed upright. It felt like the floor had stopped tilting, like I'd finally found where to plant my feet. Sometimes the real confrontation isn't the one across the table. It's the moment afterward, when you realize you don't need to explain yourself to anyone anymore. That's what I took with me. It was a Saturday morning when I saw him again. The breeze was sharp, but the sun had found a way through the clouds. I had just swept the porch when the car pulled up. Not a rental, not a delivery, just Jonah's car, still and quiet at the curb. He didn't get out right away, sat behind the wheel for a full minute before opening the door like someone stepping into a memory. His stride was slower than I remembered. Not uncertain, but softened. He carried a plain white envelope in one hand. No bag, no clipboard, no folder. Just that. He didn't knock, just sat on the wooden step like he used to when he waited for dinner. I opened the screen door, didn't say anything at first. He looked up, eyes tired, not from lack of sleep, but from something heavier. He apologized, said he let everything get too complicated. I sat beside him, not close, just enough to share the step. He held out the envelope. I didn't take it. He said he didn't expect anything. He just wanted me to know he saw it now, what he did, what it cost. The silence between us wasn't heavy, just full. I looked at the envelope again. The flap wasn't sealed. He added that it wasn't finished, wasn't sure what to write yet. I nodded. Then I said I forgave him. But forgiveness isn't a key. Some doors need to stay closed for a while, maybe forever. He nodded, too. Didn't argue. Just left the envelope on the step and walked back to the car. As he reached the driver's door, he turned back for a second, like he might say something more. But then he just gave a small, resigned nod and got in. I didn't wave. I didn't call after him. I watched the car turn the corner and disappear. Then I went back inside. I left the envelope on the porch for a while, let it sit in the morning light. The wind shifted it just slightly, but it didn't blow away. Eventually, I picked it up and set it on the kitchen counter without opening it. I stood there for a moment, hand still resting on the envelope like it might speak if I pressed hard enough. The kitchen clock ticked once, then again. Outside, a bird startled from the tree and flitted out of sight. There had been a time I would have opened it right away, hoping for apology, for insight, for something that might thread us back together. But not this time. This time I understood that some messages matter more unopened, that a gesture, however honest, doesn't always need to be completed to be recognized. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do is let something stay unanswered. The first snow came early that year, light, dry, the kind that dusts the trees without sticking. I watched it from the kitchen window while holding a cup of tea I had no plans to finish. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel hollow, just still. Still in the way an answered question feels. Still like a room that finally stopped asking for more. I spent the morning rearranging the bookshelf, not to tidy it, just to touch the spines of things I once loved. I found a letter I'd written but never sent, folded into a paperback with yellowed pages. It was addressed to the woman I used to be. I read it once, then slid it between two recipe cards. Some things are meant to be saved, not sent. Later that day, I baked a cake. One layer. No frosting. Just because. When it cooled, I cut a single slice, placed it on a real plate, and lit a candle. No occasion, no audience. I closed my eyes and made a wish. Not for him. Not for the past. Not even for peace. For clarity. When I blew out the candle, the smoke curled up like a quiet ending, one that didn't need applause. I opened the window a crack and let in the cold. It smelled like pine and clean pages. I stood in the doorway with the plate in my hands and didn't move for a long while. Not waiting, just here. That evening, I pulled the letter back out and read it again. The handwriting was rounder than I remembered. Softer. I added a line at the bottom, one I hadn't known I needed. You did enough. Then I sealed it for real. Slipped it into a small wooden box with a broken clasp and placed it on the shelf beside Dan's photo. Before bed, I opened the drawer by the fridge and pulled out an old envelope, the one that held the trust paperwork. I flipped it over once, twice. Then I put it back. There was nothing left to confirm. I already knew. I already knew what it said. And more importantly, I knew what it didn't say. It didn't say property. It didn't say liability. It didn't say resource. It said hers. And that was enough. Sometimes strength isn't a stand. It's a return to yourself, to the version of you who always deserved to be central, not because you were useful, but because you were whole. That night, I wrote one more letter. Not to Dan, not to Jonah, just a page to myself. I didn't fold it. I let it sit open on the table like something still breathing. I wrote about the quiet, about the years that felt stretched thin, about how I used to think love meant carrying everything, the weight, the silence, the guilt, and how I no longer believe that's love at all. I wrote about mornings with no messages, about pouring tea into a chipped mug, about how wholeness isn't the same as happiness, but it's something sturdier. And I ended it simply. You are not a chapter in someone else's plan. You are the author. I placed the page next to the cake plate. The candle had gone out hours ago, but the scent lingered. Not sweet, not sharp, just real. And that was where I left it. The next morning, I bundled up and walked down to the lake. The air was still, but not lifeless. The kind of still that asks you to listen harder. Ducks cut paths through the water. Someone had built a snowman near the bench where Dan and I used to sit. I smiled, just barely. I didn't bring the letter with me. I didn't need to. It was already in my bones now. The knowing, the refusal, the quiet reclamation. When I came home, I changed the bed sheets, lit a different candle, rearranged the fridge magnets. No one needed me to. I just wanted to mark the day on my own terms. That evening, I ate the last slice of cake, standing up by the kitchen sink, letting the crumbs fall where they may. I didn't clean them up right away. Some endings don't need tidying, they just need closing. Later that night, I found an old photo stuck behind the radiator. Curled edges, faded colours. It was me and Jonah years ago. I was crouched beside him in a sandbox, hands buried in the dirt, both of us laughing at something neither of us would remember. I almost threw it away, but I didn't. Instead, I slipped it into a drawer. Not out of sentiment, but to acknowledge the truth. There had been joy, not perfect, not permanent, but real. Then I poured one last cup of tea, this time in a mug Dan once bought at a gas station during a road trip. The handle was chipped, but it held just fine. I sipped slowly, looking at the dark outside the window, not searching, not measuring, just watching. And somewhere in that watching, I realized the story doesn't need to end with a ribbon. It can end with room, room to breathe, room to carry yourself forward. And when the light turned off above the stove, I didn't move to turn it back on. I just stood there, warm mug in hand, letting the dark settle around me like a coat I finally chose for myself. Not because I was hiding, but because I finally felt at home inside the quiet I made.